Hey everybody, welcome to Real Church to Real People. So glad you joined us this weekend. And let me take a moment, as I always do, look in the camera, say hello to our Hockessin location and to our online location. Much love to our church family all over the place. And so amazing to be gathered together today. And for all of you who are in person in one of our physical rooms, you came in the hurricane. So way to go. And we know there's been a lot of terrible weather in some other parts of the country. By the way, we are boots on the ground helping out in Florida through your giving. So thank you for being a part of that. Yeah. And if you're here for the first time, a big welcome to you. So glad you came. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the series that we're kicking off today in just a moment. But first, I want to just share with you what's happening in the life of our church. During this season and over the next few weeks, our fall J groups actually kicked off this past week. I hope you got a chance to join a group, but if you didn't, it is not anywhere near too late. If you're wondering how to get connected with a few people here, this is the way. You can go to yourjourney.tv/groups. My wife and I were at our group Friday night, had a great time, and really encourage you to get connected this fall. It will make all the difference. You know, relationships are the one thing that can be permanent when everything else is kind of fading away, and it's a big deal. So get in a group and take that step. And then baptism weekend is coming up, everybody. I'm really excited about this. Yeah. If you haven't experienced a baptism weekend here yet, you are in for, well, it's our version of a pool party, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's very meaningful. And if you haven't taken the step yet to go public with your faith in Jesus, we'd love to celebrate that with you. And we'll be doing that October 29th and 30th. So you hear more about that in the weeks to come. And then the weekend after that, At the Movies is kicking off our biggest series of the year. I'm so fired up about this. And it's going to be amazing this year. Our team has been working so hard over the past few months to get ready for this. And I was going to ask you to invite someone, but I'm not going to. All right? I'm going to ask you to invite everyone. Don't invite someone, invite everyone. Bring your whole neighborhood, your whole department at work, your whole social media group, your entire apartment building. I know some of you live in a place, no soliciting, you can get away with it once, all right? So just, you heard it here. But it really is gonna be an amazing series. We're gonna look at big movies from the past few years and just ask the question, how do the themes that show up again and again in the movies we love point us to our search for something more, point us to our search for God, and how do they intersect with faith? Because in every human being on this planet, there's a craving for something beyond us. It's just gonna be an amazing series. So we're ramping up for a great fall season. And as we kick off this series today, I wonder how many of us have ever been unaware of something that you realize later you probably should have been aware of. Just show of hands, physical location, show of hands, online, let us know. You've just been unaware. This has happened to me so many times. I've been unaware I was going 51 in a 35 until suddenly I became aware, you know. Unaware that I'd hurt someone's feelings with something dumb that I said. And especially when I was a lot younger, I kind of have this tendency to say whatever comes to mind. Anybody else like that? Don't do it now. But just had that tendency to say whatever comes to mind, and I would realize, man, I said something, I just wasn't aware. I've been unaware that some of my lunch was on the front of my shirt, even though lunch was 3 hours earlier. And what's with the people who don't tell you? That's a kind of cruel streak. I mean, what's wrong with you? Tell us. So being unaware is just part of being human, but sometimes unawareness actually is a result of something else, something called apathy. And apathy for me means that if I had cared more, I probably would have been aware. I can't just chalk it up to being human. If I had cared enough to pay attention to how fast I was driving, or to what I was about to say, or to glance in the mirror after lunch, I could have saved myself some pain, and in some cases, other people around me some pain. And the problem is apathy that leads to unawareness can cost us, right? There are real prices to pay sometimes for being unaware. So today we are starting a series called You Matter. And what it's about is in the title. You matter. And you're going to want to come back every week during this series because I think for a lot of us, wherever we are spiritually, so wherever you land with spiritual things, whether you consider yourself a follower of Jesus or maybe somebody who's just trying to figure it out or someone who's recovering from a past religious experience, I think a lot of us are not truly aware of how much we matter. How much we matter to God, how much we matter to the world around us. Your story matters. Your influence matters. Your decisions matter. Your life matters. And that's true whatever we believe about God. We don't just matter to God if we believe in God. We matter to God because we're human and He believes in us. And that's what I'm going to attempt to convince you of over the next few weeks, all right? Again, wherever you land. Now, here's what I know. You might be a long way from convinced right now, and I get that. So you might have the question, well, why do you think, speaking of me, why do I think that everybody matters to God? Why am I so convinced? Is it because I'm a pastor? It's kind of like in our job description. You need to believe people matter to God. Otherwise, you're going to just have a hard time. It's going to be hard. Well, the reality is that's actually not the reason. Long before I became a pastor, I became convinced that I mattered to God and that you mattered to God and that everybody on this planet matters to God. And the reason is because of a man named Jesus. It doesn't have anything to do with my life calling. That took shape after that, being a pastor. I just became convinced that people matter to God because I met Jesus. And as we kick off this series today, we're going to start with something that happens in Jesus' life that reveals how much even the people that didn't seem to matter in their world at the time mattered to him. So here's what we read in the book of Luke in the New Testament of the Bible. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. All right, so right away, who are the Pharisees? Who are we talking about here? The Pharisees were really religious people who during Jesus' time basically decided or thought they decided who and what mattered and who and what didn't matter. See, the Pharisees kept careful track of all of the religious do's and don'ts. They knew the rules and they were happy to quote them at any moment. They were very obsessed with their religiosity and they kept score. Now, how many of us, when we're playing games, like to keep score? Where are my scorekeepers? Come on, how many of us are competitive? Come on, you tried to raise your hand faster than anybody else, or you didn't even want to play because you didn't think I'd count it. All right? That's me. I don't want to play a game if we're not keeping score. I just can't wrap my mind around it. Well, we're playing just for fun. Score is fun. That's what I think. The score is fun. And I always think, God really did me a favor in spiritual growth by not giving me the kind of body that could succeed at athletic endeavors because I would be a jerk about it. I'm just telling you. I'd be like, yeah. But look at me. So God knows what he's doing. But I like to keep score. Well, the Pharisees didn't just keep score when they were playing games. They kept score 24/7. They kept score about everything. They patted themselves on the back for being good, and they looked down on everybody else for being bad. You might have met some religious people like this who kind of, take a lot of credit for how good they are, and they sort of look sideways at people that aren't as good, have made some bad decisions, not really living up to their standards. And mostly the Pharisees did not like Jesus. Why? Because Jesus could be downright savage toward religious people. But at the same time, he was shockingly kind and compassionate toward non-religious people. So Jesus actually would say some very hard things to the Pharisees and people like them who were doing good things but with not good motives. And then he would turn around and show the most extravagant grace towards someone who seemed a million miles away from being good or from God. And so one of these Pharisees decides he's going to invite Jesus to dinner, and Jesus goes. Now, why does Jesus go to dinner at this Pharisee's house? Well, I can't get into this. We're going to come back to this, another message for another time. But the reason Jesus goes to the Pharisee's house is because he's asked. Sometimes some of us wonder why Jesus hasn't shown up. He hasn't been asked. Another message. We're going to come get it like January, all right? We're coming back to it. But the Pharisee invites Jesus to dinner. Jesus shows up. He sits down to eat, and then this happens. And this is where things take a turn, all right? Just be aware. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, so she saw the Pharisee was on Instagram, Jesus is coming over, and she saw it. She was like, heart. And then she showed up, and she brought, it's just how I read the Bible, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar. So alabaster was a very costly substance at the time that people would create containers out of. And she had this alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Okay, so she shows up at dinner, brings this expensive perfume, and this is where it gets different, all right? So then she knelt behind Jesus at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. This is uncomfortable. That's what this is. This is not typically what you do at a dinner party. Nobody did this at the J group I was at this past week. Like nobody was like it's odd. It's unexpected. My wife Susie and I are frugal. Anybody else frugal? Where are my frugal people? My frugal people. I know that there's a fine line between cheap and frugal. We try to stay just on this side of it. Anybody know what I mean? It's like we're frugal, not quite cheap. And I know some of you maybe, like if you're married, you're like, man, in our marriage, one person's frugal and one person's not. We just happen to both be frugal. And so we don't buy a lot of expensive things, just not the way we're wired. But a couple of Christmases ago, I decided, because I'm trying to, I don't want to cross that line. So I decided I'm going to buy my wife some expensive perfume. I actually brought it with me today. This is not an example. This is the actual perfume I bought her 2 years ago, okay? So 25 years of marriage hanging in the balance of me not messing this up, okay? So I brought it with me. This is Armani. Armani, okay? I think that's good. I really don't, but I just actually realized this weekend when I started preaching, it's Armani. Okay, so it's Armani. And this is not like expensive, because we're frugal. But it's expensive for us. And I bought this almost 2 years ago. She still has over half a bottle left. And it's not because she doesn't like it. She loves it, I love it, but we're frugal. So she does not use this very often. It's not just like we got date night. It's like, where are we going for date night? Like we Chipotleing this date night, or are we taking it up a notch? And then maybe it's like, that's it. Because we're frugal. We're frugal. You understand? Some of you are like, yeah, you're such a great husband. Others of you are like, I would not want to be married to you, man. That is not good. So this woman shows up with this expensive jar of perfume, but this stuff is expensive. So we actually read about this in another place in the New Testament, the same experience, and scholars say that this perfume and the container it was in was actually worth about a year's wages on average at the time. So expensive. I looked up the most expensive perfumes in the world while I was preparing for this weekend. Some of them are $50,000. There was one for $250,000. Like it's diamond encrusted. What? So this woman's perfume is expensive. She brought the good stuff. And she's got a whole container of it, and everybody's enjoying their appetizer. And here's what you need to know, too. At the time, people didn't sit at a dinner table the way we do today. In Middle Eastern custom at the time, there was a very low table. People kind of reclined on a mat, and their feet would be sort of out to the side. So if you ever had read this and wondered, how did she even, what did this look like? Jesus would have been kind of sitting with his feet out to the side, low table, everybody around the table. And she comes in, and she kneels behind Jesus' feet, and she starts crying, but not just crying, weeping so much that the tears are falling down her face, they're falling on Jesus' feet. She absentmindedly, I think, she just kind of wipes him off with her hair, and then she starts kissing his feet and pouring this expensive perfume on them. Someone has the last cheesesteak egg roll halfway to their mouth, and they're frozen, just... this is uncomfortable. Nobody's expecting this. And clearly, Jesus is the woman is unaware of the scene that she's making, and Jesus seems unaware of how uncomfortable it's making everybody else. Why doesn't she stop, and why doesn't he stop her? Is he unaware? Or is he actually very much aware? Is she unaware? Or is she actually very much aware? See, this woman is overcome by emotion, not because she's unaware, but because she's suddenly very aware of something, how much she matters to God. Jesus has that effect on people. When you get in the presence of Jesus, all of a sudden you realize, man, I am loved just the way I am. Doesn't make any sense. I didn't bring anything to the equation. I have nothing to offer this good God who created the universe, but he loves me more than my mind can imagine. And that's this woman in this moment. Any apathy she had is gone. It's out the window. She's so moved by the realization of what Jesus being in the room means, that God cares about people like her, that she loses her sense of anything else. She's very aware. And isn't it amazing how when we realize how much we matter to God, nothing else matters quite as much to us? What people think doesn't matter as much. The image we've been trying to convey of having it all together doesn't matter as much. The fears we've been holding on to don't matter as much. Listen, if you're new to all of this, you can take a pass on this, but if you're a follower of Jesus, don't lose your awareness of how extraordinary it is that you get to come into his presence. Stay aware. Because when we become aware of who Jesus is and what he represents and what that means about what we mean to God, everything changes. Could it be the reason that so much other stuff for some of us is mattering so much to us right now? We're tight-fisted about it. We're anxious about it. We're lying awake at night worrying about it. We're upset about it. We're frustrated about it because we're unaware of how much we matter to God. And if we knew how much we matter to God, very little else would make that kind of impression on us. If you don't consider yourself a Christian, you may have some less than positive opinions about what Christians are like, and I get that. And maybe you've met some Christians that I should probably apologize for. But do you know what the first Christians were like? You can study this out. They were different, not in the ways you would assume. They did life together in a very close way, in a way that was extremely unusual during their time. They built these close friendships. They took care of people in need. Did you know that until Christians came along, the civilized world had never before had a group of people or a religion or whatever you want to call it who believed that you should lay your own life on the line to help someone else? That was unheard of. Nobody thought that you should go out on a limb to help the sick or the poor or the widows or the slaves. A very class-oriented society that Christians burst onto the scene of, and they believed it. They took care of people, and they made friends with people who didn't believe what they believed. They insisted that women were created in the image of God and worthy of honor and protection, just like men. The early Christians were into justice before it was a hashtag. They took care of people. They loved people. Why? One reason. Not because of their religion, not because they all got together and said, all right, 10 rules for being a Christian. No, one reason, Jesus. That was the reason. They were like, we met Jesus, changed everything. Just changed everything. Our world got turned upside down by this Jesus. That woman that we just read about, here's what she knew. She knew Jesus would welcome her even if no one else did. And whatever your story, whatever your past, I hope you feel that here. But this is not a place where all the good people look down on the bad people. This is a place where all the people look up to a good God that we all need so much. We need him so much. But that is not what the Pharisee is feeling. He's feeling none of that. When the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, he said to himself, we just pause. I thought I could get away with the stuff I just said to myself. This guy's thoughts show up in the Bible. Anybody else just a little freaked out about that? Like that's just so, anyway, all right. So he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. She's a sinner. Like a sinner. A capital S sinner. Really? I mean, there are sinners and then there's this woman. You know what I mean? She's a sinner. Why is Jesus allowing this to happen? You ever invited somebody over and then immediately regretted it? Have you had that experience? That's this Pharisee in this moment. He's like, I knew we should have eaten out. Like, this is just not going the way I had hoped it would go. Now, this woman's here and everything's going south. I think a lot of us struggle to feel worthy. I'm sure this woman did. I'm sure based on her past, that word phrasing immoral woman, and the fact that she had this perfume, this very expensive perfume in an expensive container, she was probably a prostitute. We don't know that for sure, but that was probably her life. She came alone, and she had her hair down, all things that, like in the culture of the time, would indicate that was her life. And she, I'm sure, felt unworthy at moments in her life. But I think the Pharisee did too. I think that's why he probably built that really religious life, as a way to feel better about himself. Do you know why some of us always act like we're better than everyone else? Because deep down we're scared to death we're no better than anyone else. That's why. So the next time you see someone being really arrogant and selfish and judgmental and cruel, just picture a little child, scared to death, trying desperately to make it look like they count. That's what's going on when we build an image of having it all together. You know, if you build an image of having it all together, eventually you start to believe your own hype. And you start to buy into this, maybe I am pretty good. You know? I was on social media earlier, and I'm not like that sucker. Like, that's a bad person right there. I'm good. We start to believe it. We start to believe our own hype. And for a lot of us, we're good because we never say it out loud. Then Jesus answered his thoughts. Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I have something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. Then Jesus told him a story. So now the Pharisee has a name, Simon, and Jesus is reading his mind. Again, Simon, he didn't say any of this out loud. He should be good. There's a woman of questionable reputation at his house, uninvited, weeping, pouring perfume on Jesus' feet, kissing his feet. But he doesn't say it out loud. Some of us would have said it out loud. Excuse me, you spilled your perfume. I don't know if you noticed. It's making all of us very uncomfortable. But Simon just says it to himself, but Jesus answers his thoughts, and he tells Simon a story. You want to know the story that Jesus tells Simon? So you got to read it this week. It's in Luke 7. It's in your Bible. It's amazing. It's a great story. It's about forgiveness, and it's great, but I'm not going to tell you. I want you to read it this week. But after he finished the story, he turned to the woman and said to Simon, look at this woman. Now, I promise you, Simon hadn't been looking at anything else. But Jesus says, no, I want you to really look. She's kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss. It sounds weird to us, but it was a custom at the time. In the Middle East, it was this gesture of friendship and closeness when you welcome somebody into your home. Jesus says, you didn't do that, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head. Again, sounds strange to us, but it was a custom at the time. An honored guest would receive this little dab of oil to show that they were welcomed and favored. Jesus says, you skipped that. You were unaware. But she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. Simon, you didn't, but she did, because she gets it. And I want you to really look at her, because this is how people who get it act. Simon, you're apathetic, and because of it, you're unaware, and it's costing you. A few months ago, we did an outreach at a laundromat in Newcastle where you paid for people to have get their laundry done with your giving. And one of you who served shared this with us. A woman and her son came up to me and excitedly said, I saw your sign in the Wawa, and we brought everything from our tent to wash. She was so happy just to have her belongings cleaned. It took everything in me not to break down. I felt such compassion for this woman as she told me her story of growing up in Newark, graduating from Glasgow High, having what seemed like a normal family, but then going through a divorce, losing her home, living in motels and with friends, and finally in a tent behind Walmart with her son. she encouraged me with her "we'll be fine" attitude. She was so grateful that we just paid for her laundry. That's a perfume pourer. Simon forgot who matters. He just forgot over time. He became apathetic. And that turned into this deep unawareness. He forgot that he mattered to God, or at least he forgot why he mattered to God. Simon thought, oh, I matter to God because I'm religious. I matter to God because I'm good. I matter to God because I do all these good things and I avoid all these bad things. I matter to God because when I have a judgmental attitude, it all takes space in my head. I never say it out loud. That's why I matter to God. When the reality is, the reason Simon mattered to God is because he too was a sinner. A broken, imperfect person, just like this woman. That's what Jesus is saying. Look at her, Simon, and see yourself. Because you're the same. And you think there's such a big difference between you, but you are the same person. You both need me. And because Simon couldn't see why he mattered to God, he couldn't see why this woman mattered to God. I want to ask you 2 questions that I hope hang out with you all week until we pick the series back up next weekend. They're very simple. Here they are. Are you aware that you matter to God? And number 2, are you aware that everybody around you matters to God? You may not even be sure what you believe about God, but if it's true that you matter to him, wouldn't it be great to become aware of that? To live each day of your life knowing deep down I am accepted and loved and welcomed by God, and it's not because of any good thing I've done, it's because of Jesus. And if you do believe in God and you believe that it's true that everybody else matters to him, wouldn't it be great if you became more aware of that? Wouldn't it be great if all of us, myself at the top of the list, begin to live as if every human being we interact with, especially those we are tempted to write off and look down on and judge, they matter to God. Look at what Jesus says. He says, I tell you, her sins, and they are many. Jesus did not pretend that her sins were not many because she did not pretend that her sins were not many. And he says, she's got a lot of sins, but they've been forgiven. How many of them? All of them. So she has shown me much love. But a person who's forgiven little shows only little love. People who try to earn their way to God are convinced that they only need to be forgiven a little. So what happens? They end up loving a little. They only love God a little. They only love other people a little because they think, well, I only need to be forgiven a little. And it could be if you're religious, it could be if you're non-religious. In fact, people who don't really think they need God, who don't have a sense of desperation for God's goodness and grace, they may be tolerant toward other people, but that's not the same as loving. I'm tolerant toward squirrels. When did tolerance become a value? I tolerate you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you just putting up with my existence on the planet. So kind. It's not what Jesus calls us to. He doesn't call us to tolerance. He calls us to love like he loved. Tolerance means I put up with you. And we agree to disagree and whatever. Love means I would lay my life down for you, especially if we disagree, to look like the one I follow and serve. And over time, people who think they only need to be forgiven a little become apathetic and unaware. But people who have experienced Jesus know that they have been forgiven a lot. Can I tell you, I have needed to be forgiven a lot. People who've really experienced who Jesus is, they know I have needed to be forgiven a lot. So what do? They love a lot. They love God a lot. They love other people a lot. Like it's a little bit embarrassing. It's a little bit uncomfortable. How much they love. Why? Because they know they've been forgiven so much. You matter to God. Wherever you land with spiritual things, you matter to God. You matter so much that God gave his son Jesus so that you could have a relationship with him. Jesus was God's expensive perfume. poured out on you and me. And he wasn't frugal with it, and he didn't measure it. He didn't still have half a jar 2 years later. No, it was just all poured out in one act of sacrifice when Jesus gave his life, dying on a cross, which was the punishment for a criminal or a slave at the time. Jesus said, I will step into the lowest part of humanity, and I will prove that you matter to God. That's why you matter, because of Jesus. And if you believe that, then not only do you matter, but so does the perfume you pour out, or the cologne if you need to translate it. If you believe in Jesus, it means something to him when you pour out what's valuable to you to honor him. When you love a lot because you're so aware that he poured out his life for you. You say, well, what's my perfume? I mean, what is that? It's our relationships. They matter. It's your influence. It matters. It's the invitations you extend. They matter. It's your generosity. It matters. It's your compassion, your patience, your faithfulness. It matters. It's your presence at a J group this week where you encouraged somebody. You didn't even know it, but they were going through such a hard week and almost didn't show up. But God needed two things to happen. He needed them in the room and you in the room. And it matters. It matters. It's you getting plugged into the life of a community of faith and finding your place and making a difference with your life. It matters. It matters. Because it's how you stay aware. Maybe you feel like this woman, you have a broken past. Your past does not define you when Jesus is in the room. Come back next weekend. Maybe you're skeptical. Maybe you've been burned in the past. Maybe this is all new to you. Come back. See what God can do in your life and with your life. Maybe you're a little bit more like the Pharisee, like you have an image to protect. Maybe you've been trying to kind of create an image of being good, and you find your worth in your job or how much you smile or the fact that you don't do really bad stuff like people you know or how religious you are. Maybe for some of you even, you do Christian things, but you found your worth in the things you do instead of the thing Jesus did for you. Come back next weekend. Let God over the next few weeks expand your heart and your soul. Because when you understand how much you matter to God, then everybody else is going to start to matter a lot more to you. And until then, those are the two questions that I want to hang out with you. Are you aware? If you woke up every day this week and just said, am I aware today that I matter to God? And number two, are you aware that everybody around you matters to God? What if you went to work every day this week, to school every day this week? You're a stay-at-home parent. You woke up earlier than you wanted to because of those kids. But you just said, everybody around me today, my neighbors, my family, that person I would usually write off, matters to the same God I matter to. How could your life change? So if you'd say week one of this series, you know what? By the end of this series, by the end of October, I'd like to be able to answer both of those questions with a resounding yes. Would you just lift your hand and hold it up high? I want to pray over you. Hockessin, lift it up high online. Hold it up high. Let's go to God together. Father, we come to you. Wow. We're in awe of how much we matter to you. So we come before you right now, just as we are. Come on, do that with me. I don't bring anything to the table. I don't bring like a long list of good things that I've done or big plans that I have or ways in which I'm better than other people. I don't bring any of that, Jesus. I come and I kneel at your feet. And I just am overcome. We're overcome with the realization of how much we matter to you. So we pour out what we have. We bring it to you. Here's my life. Come on, would you tell him that? If Jesus has changed your life, would you tell him, Jesus, here's my life. I'm holding nothing back. I want to be poured out. And while you let God speak to your heart for a moment more, listen, if you don't have a real relationship with God yet, now if you're still kicking the tires, you're not ready to believe anything, I'm not going to twist your arm. Come back next week. But if you're ready to take that step, if you want a real relationship with God, which are you more like? Are you more like the perfume pourer, the certain immoral woman? Or are you more like the Pharisee? You've lived a good life. I think it's amazing that they were both in the same room with Jesus, and they both needed him. And whichever you identify more with, whether you're scared to death you're not worthy enough, or you've been counting on your goodness, if you want to lay that down and just come to Jesus today, you can begin a real relationship with God. So I'm going to lead us in prayer again. This is your moment, it's your opportunity. Right where you are, whisper out a prayer of faith if that's you, something like this. Jesus, today, I bring my life to you. I believe in you. I believe you died to save me. I believe you rose again. You are leader and Lord of my life. And from this moment on, by your power, I will follow you. And if that's you, everyone around you stays focused on God. Listen, if you would say, I want to be included in that prayer, I'm putting my faith in Jesus. Will you lift your hand today? Just hold it up high, boldly. Yes. Yeah. In Hockessin, hold that hand up high. Yeah. Online, let us know. Type the word faith in the comments, whatever platform you're on. It's amazing. Thank you for taking that step. And then everybody, would you help me just give Jesus all the praise? Can we do that together?